The wind howled outside the small wooden cabin. Snow tapped against the windows like tiny cold fingers. Inside, the human stirred a pot of soup over the old heater. He was alone, as always, living far away from cities and people, that's how. He liked it. Quiet, simple, peaceful. Until tonight, the knock came just after sunset. 1, 2, 3 sharp and fast. He froze, spoon in hand. No one ever came this far, not by accident. He moved slowly to the door, grabbing the old metal pipe he kept nearby. Another knock, louder this time, then silence. He opened the door just a little, and what he saw made his breath catch. A woman. Stood there, but not human. Her skin was soft, violet. Eyes glowing faintly blue in the dark. Snow clung to her long black hair and ragged cloak. A small child clung to her leg, shivering badly. Another one was wrapped in a cloth on her back. Not moving, she didn't beg. She didn't cry. She only said, "Please, let us in." Her voice shook, but her eyes were strong. The human opened the door fully and stepped aside. The alien woman walked in with the children, her body stiff from the cold. He shut the door quickly, locking it. "What happened to you?" he asked, not expecting an answer. She lowered herself to the floor slowly. The children beside her. One child looked no older than 5, the other just a baby. "Silent, we were walking," she said, her voice weak. "We had to leave." The human gave them a blanket, then another, then his own. He poured hot soup into a bowl and placed it in front of her. She took it without a word and fed the older child first. Then she sipped slowly, carefully, like she hadn't eaten in days. "Your name?" he asked gently. She didn't answer right away, Jera, she said finally. "And these are my children." He nodded, not pressing more. "You can call me Mason," the human said, then stood up. "You can stay here tonight. I'll sleep in the chair." But she reached out and touched his arm. Her fingers warmed despite the cold. "No," she said. "I will warm your bed if you let us stay." Mason looked at her, surprised. Her face was calm, her eyes serious. "I didn't mean it like that," he said, stepping back. "You don't have to, I know," she said softly. "But I want to. That is the cost of safety for my children." He felt something twist inside his chest. Not desire, no. This was something else. Pity, anger, sadness, confusion, all at once. "You don't owe me anything," he said firmly. "You're safe here." Jera looked down, nodding slightly. She picked up the baby and held it close, her shoulders trembling. That night she didn't come to his bed, but she did place the children on the floor near the fire and curled up beside them. Mason sat in the chair for a long time, listening to the wind, wondering who she really was and why she chose his door. Later that night, he heard a soft sound. Shara was crying, very quietly. Trying not to wake the children, he walked over and sat down beside her. She didn't stop him, didn't speak, just leaned into him slightly, just enough to know she wasn't alone anymore. And outside, the snow kept falling, covering their footprints, hiding the trail, but someone would come looking. He didn't know who or when, but he had a feeling this was just the beginning. Asterisk, the storm had passed. But the cold remained. Mason woke early, as usual. But this time, something felt different. He wasn't alone anymore. He looked toward the fire, where the alien woman and her children still slept close together. Jera's face looked peaceful, but tired. The baby clutched her shirt, and the older child mumbled softly in its sleep. Mason sighed and went to boil water, the way he did every morning, but today he wasn't just making tea for himself. As he reached for a clean cup, something fell from the shelf, a small metal photo frame. It's tucked behind his old books. It wasn't his. He bent down and picked it up. Confused, the photo inside was worn. Bent at the edges, it showed Jera standing beside a tall alien male, both in dark armor. The man had a proud look, and Jera. She looked younger, stronger, full of fire. Mason turned it over, looking for a name. But there was nothing. He looked up. Shara was standing silently behind him, her eyes locked on the photo. "Where did you find that?" she asked, voice low. But sharp it fell. I didn't mean to, Mason started. But she took it from his hand. She stared at it for a long moment, then slipped it into her cloak. I shouldn't have left it out, she whispered. It's dangerous. Who? Was he? Mason asked gently. Your mate? She hesitated, then nodded once. He was a soldier, she said. But not just any soldier, he was a commander. Mason leaned against the counter, silent. Shira sat down slowly, wrapping her arms around her knees. They hated him in the end, she said, her voice hollow. He fought for the wrong side, they say. But was it really the wrong side? Mason asked. Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the morning light. He fought to protect the small ones, the weak ones, the ones with no names, she said. But the powerful don't care about the weak. They called him a traitor. And after he died, they came for me and the children. Mason felt a chill, and it wasn't from the weather. Who came? He asked. The Black Talon Guard, she whispered. He used to command them. But now they hunt us, say his blood must not continue. She pulled her cloak tighter around her, as if trying to hide the children from the past itself. I ran from them, through snow, through night, through pain, she said. I didn't stop until I saw your lights. Why me? Mason asked quietly. You're human, she said simply, and humans don't throw children away. The words hit hard and deep. Mason looked at the children now stirring, rubbing their sleepy eyes. The boy crawled into his lap without asking, yawning wide. Shira watched, something soft growing behind her eyes. He likes you, she said, a tiny smile on her lips. I'm not exactly father material, Mason said awkwardly. You are, she whispered. More than you know, later that day. Jera helped him chop wood. She wasn't strong like before, but she was quick, careful, efficient. They didn't speak much, but every now and then, Mason would catch her looking at him, not with fear, but with something else, something quiet. Almost warm. At one point, while wiping sweat from her brow, she asked, If the Black Talon Guard finds us here, will you give us up? Mason didn't answer right away. He looked at her, then at the children playing with snow. I don't think I could, he said softly, even if I wanted to. That night, while the children slept, Jira stood by the window, watching the sky. Do you miss him? Mason asked from the table. She didn't turn around. Yes, she said. But not the way you think. I miss what he stood for. Not who he became. She turned then, her eyes tired, but honest. I don't want to live in the past. Anymore, she said. I want to protect my children now. Not for revenge, but for their future. She stepped closer to Mason, the firelight dancing across her skin. If that future includes you, she said quietly, I won't push it away. He looked into her eyes, unsure what to say. But she didn't ask for words, only trust, and slowly. Something inside him, something broken long ago, began to warm again. It began with a strange hum in the air, low, distant, but not natural. Mason stood outside the cabin chopping wood, his breath fogging in the cold. He paused, lifting his head toward the sound. In the gray sky above, two blinking lights moved, slowly behind the clouds, too smooth for birds, too quiet for human ships. Then came a sharp buzz in his earpiece. Static. Broken code, not human channels. Something was scanning the area. He rushed back inside. Slamming the door behind him, Jira looked up from feeding the baby. Eyes alert. Get the kids ready, Mason said quietly. We've got company. She didn't ask questions, didn't panic. She wrapped the baby tighter in her shawl and signaled the older child to move to the back. Mason opened the floor panel near the fireplace, a hidden trapdoor, leading to a small chamber underground. It had once been his emergency bunker when he came to this world now. It would be their hiding place. Jera climbed in, the baby quiet against her chest, the older child holding her hand. Mason knelt beside them, handing over a small flashlight and some energy bars. You stay quiet no matter what you hear, he said. Jira nodded, her face pale but calm. Then she reached up, touched his cheek, and whispered, Please don't let them take us. The trapdoor closed, and the room went still, just as three loud knocks slammed against the cabin's front door. Mason walked over slowly, wiping sweat from his brow, though the room was cold. He opened the door and faced two tall armored aliens in black. Helmets covered their faces, but the insignia on their chest was unmistakable. "Black Talon Guard," human one said, voice deep and filtered. "We detected recent biosignatures, 3 foreign, 1 native. Just me in here, Mason," said coolly, leaning on the doorway. "Maybe your scanner picked up a fox or something." The guard stepped forward, brushing past him without permission. The second followed, weapons ready, scanning the room with sharp red lights. Mason stayed calm, but his heart beat like a drum. Every second they stayed inside, the children were in danger. The first guard examined the floor, stepping dangerously close to the hidden trapdoor. Mason coughed loudly, then dropped his cup on purpose, spilling hot tea across the floor. "Ah, damn it," he muttered, kneeling to clean it. Blocking the exact area they were scanning, the guard looked annoyed but stepped away, checking the far corner instead. After a few tense minutes, one of them said, "No signs found." They both turned to Mason, staring through their dark visors. "If you see anything, or anyone, report it." The first one said, "Right," Mason replied with a nod. "I'll be sure to send a postcard." They left without another word. The door hissing shut behind them, Mason stayed frozen in place for a full minute, then exhaled deeply. He rushed to the fireplace, opened the trapdoor, and helped Jira and the children back out. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes still held fire. "They'll come again," she whispered. "They always do." Mason knew she was right. They hadn't found anything, but now they knew where to look. The signal would stay on their map. And patrols would return, stronger, more aggressive. "We can't stay here," he said. "Pacing the room, we'll need to move before nightfall." "But where?" Jira asked. "I've run so far already, there's nowhere left." Mason thought hard, then snapped his fingers. "There's a place," he said. "North of here, in the frozen cliffs. There's an old mining cave, hidden from scanners. Buried deep underground, it might just work." She nodded slowly, holding the children close.
"Mason,"
she said softly, "you could leave us. Save yourself." He looked at her like she had lost her mind. "I didn't open that door to leave you behind," he said. "I opened it because I saw someone worth saving." She stepped forward then, pressing her forehead lightly to his. "Then I trust you," she said, "and I will follow," as they packed what little food and gear they could carry. Mason stopped briefly to glance around the cabin. He had built it for peace, for hiding from the world. But now that peace was gone, and in its place he had something new, something alive. He looked down at the child tugging on his hand, smiling. Despite the fear, and in that moment, he knew he wouldn't run from this family. He would run with them. Night was falling, and snow began to drift again. But this time they were ready. This time. The hunted would become harder to catch. Asterisk snow covered the world in soft white silence. The cave entrance was hidden beneath layers of ice and rock. From the outside it looked like nothing, just another frozen cliff. But inside, there was warmth, there was life, and for the first time in weeks, there was laughter. Mason crouched near the cave's small fire, building a cooking pot from scrap metal. Shira sat nearby, holding the baby in her arms, gently feeding him warm broth. But the most surprising thing was the sound that echoed through the stone walls. The older child, Kale, was laughing, chasing a small pebble around like it was a toy. Laughing, giggling, even clapping his hands. It made Mason smile without meaning to. "First time I've heard him make a sound like that," he said quietly. Jira looked up and nodded. "He hasn't laughed since." "Before the fire," she whispered, "before the raid." Mason stirred the pot slowly, his eyes watching the boy. For a child who had seen so much fear, so much loss, it was a miracle to hear joy. Kale ran toward him, tiny feet echoing on the rock, and held up the pebble like it was treasure. Mason took it and pretended it was gold, bowing low. "Oh, great stone of power," he said in a deep voice. "Teach me your ways." The boy laughed again, louder this time. And even the baby cooed softly. Jira covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes glistening. "They are becoming children again," she whispered, "not survivors. Later that day, Mason led them deeper into the cave system. He had found old crates left behind by miners' long gaunt tools, blankets, even a broken solar lamp he was trying to fix. "We can make this work," he said. "It's not a palace, but it's safe." Jera touched the rocky wall with her hand. "It's more home than we've had in months," she said, "maybe years, as the days passed." Mason taught Kale simple things: how to tie knots, how to filter water using snow and cloth. Kale followed him everywhere, copying his every move. "Looks like you've got a shadow," Jera joked one evening. Mason laughed, brushing snow off his coat. "He's got better balance than I did at his age," one evening, as the wind howled outside the cave. Jera sat beside Mason by the fire. The baby slept between them, and Kale snored softly in the corner wrapped in furs. Jera reached over and held Mason's hand. Slowly, carefully, he didn't pull away. "I was afraid when I came to your door," she said, "afraid you'd turn me away, or worse." Mason looked at her, her face glowing in the firelight. "But you didn't," she said, voice soft. "You gave us warmth, food, safety." She looked at him, eyes shining, but more. "The net you gave my children back their laughter." Mason looked down, his voice low. "I didn't do it alone," he said. "You've been strong every day." Jera shook her head gently. "I was surviving," she said, "but now I'm living." Their heads leaned in close, but before their lips met, a sharp beat broke the moment. Mason's face snapped toward the corner where his old scanner sat, now half repaired. A red blinking light flashed slowly once, then, "Again, movement," he said quickly, rising to his feet. Outside, Jera grabbed the baby, holding him tight. Kale woke up, eyes wide with fear. Mason rushed to the small slit in the cave wall that looked out toward the forest path. Through the storm, he saw nothing, only snow and darkness. But the blinking light didn't lie. Someone or something was nearby. He turned to Jera. "Take the children into the back tunnel." She didn't argue, just nodded and vanished into the dark hallway behind the main chamber. Mason grabbed his old rifle, checking the charge. He stepped out of the main cave entrance just enough to scan the area. Snow fell hard, but their movement near the trees. Something large and slow. He raised the rifle, finger ready, but the shape stumbled and fell into the snow. It's not a soldier, not a guard. It was an animal, wounded and limping, covered in frost. Mason lowered his weapon with a sigh. Just a creature looking for warmth. Like them, he went back. Inside, sealing the entrance carefully. When Jera returned with the children, he simply said, "False alarm." But he didn't tell her how close he'd come to pulling the trigger, or how ready he had been to fight, because deep down he knew something there. Peace here would not last forever. The guards hadn't given up. They were just slow, patient, and cruel. And next time, it wouldn't be a wild animal in the snow. Next time, it would be the past knocking again. It began with a burning smell, sharp and bitter. Mason sat up quickly, heart racing. The baby stirred. Kale whimpered in his sleep, and Jera was already rising from her bed of furs, her eyes wide and alert. The air inside the cave felt wrong. Thick, smoky, too warm for a frozen world. Then came the light. Faint at first, flickers of orange on the cave walls. It wasn't sunrise. It wasn't the fire pit. It was something else, something outside, and far too close. Mason rushed to the mouth of the cave, just as a loud boom echoed through the cliffs. A fireball lit the forest below. The tree line was burning. A second explosion followed. Then a third. In the distance, several black dots moved through the trees. Too organized, too fast to be animals. Mason's blood ran cold. "They found us," he whispered. Jera didn't ask how or when. She simply wrapped the baby tightly, helped Kale into his boots, and turned to Mason with fierce eyes. "What do we do?" she asked, voice steady despite her fear. "We move," he said, grabbing his rifle and the emergency bag. Now, the cave shook as another explosion hit the cliffs. Closer this time, snow fell from the ceiling in chunks, and the firelight flickered brighter. They ran into the deeper tunnels, their footsteps echoing against the stone. Mason had mapped the system earlier. There was another exit on the far side of the ridge, but it was narrow and steep. Still, it was there only. Chance, Cale tripped and cried out, but Jera scooped him up, whispering calming words. Behind them, the fire roared louder. Mason stayed at the rear, watching for shadows. The red lights of scanners began to dance along the tunnel walls. They were coming at the last chamber. Before the exit shaft, Mason stopped and turned. "I'll hold them here," he said. "You get out with the kids?" "No," Jera said, shaking her head. "You come too. If I leave, they'll follow us," Mason said, loading his rifle. "But if I stay, I buy you time." She stepped closer, grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. "I can't lose you." He touched her cheek gently. "You won't," he said, "but I need you to be brave again." Jera stared into his eyes, then gave one hard nod. She turned and vanished into the tunnel with the children. Mason took a deep breath and crouched behind the old stone wall, waiting. Listening, the silence didn't last long. 3 soldiers in black armor burst into the chamber. Weapons raised, Mason fired the first shot before they even spoke. The first dropped, the second ducked, the third fired back. The chamber lit up with sparks and shouting. Mason took cover, breathing hard, heart pounding like a drum. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but muscle memory didn't forget. He hit the second soldier with a blast to the chest. The third managed to clip his shoulder. Pain flared sharp. Hot, but Mason didn't stop. He charged forward, using the element of surprise, with a roar. He slammed the last soldier into the wall, knocking him out cold. Then he staggered back. Blood dripping from his arm, legs shaking. He didn't have much time. He grabbed one of their comm devices, yanked the wires, and dropped a small charge from his bag. As he limped toward the far tunnel, he pressed the detonator. Behind him, the chamber exploded, sealing the way with falling rocks. It wouldn't stop them forever, but it would slow them down when he emerged from the other side of the ridge. Dawn was breaking over the snow. Jera was waiting at the base of a jagged rock, holding the baby tight, Cale clinging to her leg. Eyes searched wildly, then found him. She ran forward, tears already falling. "You're hurt," she cried. Holding him up. "I've been worse," Mason said with a weak smile. "But I didn't come for Sci. I came for something to protect." Didn't stop walking for hours. They followed the sun. Deeper into the wilderness, no more caves, no more hiding, just one goal: stay ahead of the hunters and live. That night, they found an abandoned transport pod hidden in a dried-out riverbed. Rusty, broken, but still shielded and safe, Jera helped Mason sit, cleaned his wound with shaking hands. "You're bleeding for us," she whispered, "and still you stay." Mason touched her face gently. "You said you'd warm my bed if I let you stay," he said, eyes half closed. She leaned close, her forehead touching his. "Now I want to," she said. "God, because this isn't just survival anymore. This is our family, and for the first time in many dark nights, the fire they built wasn't to scare away the cold. It was a promise that they would never be hunted alone again. The storm chased them for 3 days. Thick snow fell from the sky, like a curtain, hiding the world behind it. Winds howled through the trees, sharp as blades. But still, they walked. Mason's arm was wrapped tight. Jera carried the baby on her back, and Cale, brave and small, held Mason's hand without complaint. They had no map, no path, just trust, and the direction of the stars above the clouds. On the morning of the 4th day, Jera stopped suddenly. Her boots frozen into the earth, she turned her head slowly, scanning the mountains ahead. "There," she whispered, pointing toward a narrow crack in the cliff wall, hidden behind twisted trees and hanging ice. Mason squinted through the snow, barely able to see anything. "You sure?" he asked, his breath short from pain and cold. "I remember it," she said, her voice filled with memory. "When I was a child, my mother brought me here once. The crack led to a tunnel, rough and tight, just wide enough for them to squeeze through. Inside, the wind died, the snow disappeared, and silence returned. It opened into a wide cavern, deep under the mountains, untouched by war or fire. Strange glowing moss lined the walls, lighting the stone with soft green light. Pools of warm spring water bubbled in the corners, steaming gently. The air was warmer here. Like the mountain itself was alive and protecting them. Mason leaned against the wall, sliding down slowly. His strength was fading, but he smiled as Kale laughed at the glowing moss. Jira laid the baby down and rushed to Mason's side, checking his wound. "It's healing slowly," she said. "But you need rest. Then it's a good thing we found paradise," Mason whispered, trying to joke, though his face was pale. They made a fire near one of the warm springs and shared their last bit of dried food that night, for the first time in weeks. They weren't hiding, running, or freezing. Jira sat beside Mason, her fingers brushing gently against his. "You've saved us," she said, eyes soft, over and over. "I didn't do it alone." Mason replied, "You're stronger than you think." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You gave me strength," she whispered, "when I had none left in the days that followed." They turned the cave into a home. Jira cleaned the pool water for drinking. Mason used his tools to set up a heat trap that kept the cave warm at night. Kale helped build sleeping spots using soft moss and leftover cloth. The baby, now stronger, began to coo and smile. It wasn't just a hiding place anymore. It was. There's each evening, Mason and Jira sat together, sometimes speaking, sometimes just watching the glowing walls. One night, while Kale slept beside his baby brother, Jira turned to Mason and placed a hand over his chest. "Back then," she said, "when I said I'd warm your bed, I meant it as a trade. But now," she paused, "now I want to warm your life." Mason looked at her for a long time, his heart quiet but full. He didn't say anything yet. He just kissed her forehead gently and whispered, "Then stay here. With me always, but peace never lasts." One morning the scanner buzzed again, faint. Far away but real. Jira stood beside Mason as he stared at the blinking light. "They're still searching," she said, her voice steady. "They won't stop," Mason replied. "Not until they find something else worth chasing." She looked at him then, her face full of quiet strength. "Then maybe we should stop hiding. What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean, we stop running," she said. "We face them together, and we end this." Mason hesitated, but then nodded slowly. "You're not the same woman who knocked on my door," he said. "You're stronger now." She smiled, her eyes shining. "You made me believe in myself again." They spent the next 2 days preparing. Mason fixed an old distress beacon, rewired it to send a false heat signature 5 miles away if the guards tracked it. They'd move in the wrong direction. Jira set up warning traps near the hidden entrance, quiet but deadly. Kale helped where he could, always watching his mother and Mason with bright, loyal eyes. This time, they wouldn't be caught by surprise. This time, they would fight not just to survive, but to live freely. And when Mason sat with Jira that night, holding her hand beneath the stars, carved in stone, he whispered, "I didn't come to this world to be a hero." "You didn't have to," she replied. "You became one anyway." And as the mountain kept them warm, far from the reach of death and fire, their hearts stayed strong. For tomorrow, they would stand together as one. Snow fell softly on the world above. The mountains stood silent, hiding the cave that held a family the galaxy had tried to forget. Inside, the fire crackled low, and Mason was sharpening the last blade he had. Jira stood behind him, watching. As the children slept nearby, she could feel it deep in her bones. The moment was coming. The day she stopped running, the day she chose to fight for the life she wanted. The scanner blinked red, slow but steady. "They're here," Mason said quietly. "And this time, they're close." Jira nodded, her jaw tight, her eyes filled. "With calm fire, let them come," she whispered. "I have something to say to them." That morning she didn't wear rags or the cloak of a widow. She wore her old warrior armor, patched together from scavenged plates, softened by time and motherhood. Mason helped her fix the shoulder strap, his fingers gentle. "You don't have to face them alone," he said. "I know," she replied, placing her hand on his chest. "But they need to hear it from me." Kale clutched Mason's leg, scared but quiet. The baby stirred in Jira's sling, sensing the tension. Jira knelt and kissed Kale's forehead. "No matter what you hear, stay hidden," she told him. "Stay quiet, stay strong." Kale nodded bravely. gripping the small wooden toy Mason had carved for him. "I believe in you, Mama," he whispered, outside. Snow crunched under heavy boots. 6 soldiers in dark armor stood at the edge of the mountain path, their scanners pulsing red. One of them raised a speaker. Voice booming across the cliffs, "Alien widow Jera of the fallen house of Varen. Surrender yourself and your offspring now. You are accused of harboring traitors' blood and fleeing judgment. You have 1 minute." Jera stepped out of the cave entrance alone, her armor catching the early light. The wind whipped her hair around her face, but she stood tall. "I am Jera," she called. "Widow of Commander Khan, mother of 2, and no longer running." The soldiers froze, not expecting her to speak, not expecting defiance. "You have no right to chase my children," she continued, voice stronger now. "Their blood may come from a rebel, but their future belongs to peace, the lead." Soldier stepped forward, visor reflecting the white snow. "You broke Alliance law," he growled. "You disappeared. You hid your bloodline." I protected my children from monsters like you," Jera snapped, "and I found a better protector, one not born of our world." She pointed to the cave behind her. Mason now stood, rifle in hand, silent but ready. "A human," she said, "the one your empire mocked, feared, and ignored. He gave us food, warmth, and safety when no one else would." The soldier raised his blaster. "You have made your choice then," he said coldly. "You sighed with the enemy." Jera stepped forward, not blinking. "No," she said. "I side with what is right. I choose him," she shouted, her voice echoing across the cliffs. "Oh, and I choose my children's future, free of your chains." The soldiers hesitated, unsure. The mountain was watching, and even the wind seemed to pause. From behind a snow-covered rock, Kale peeked out, eyes wide. Mason raised his rifle slowly, ready to fight, ready to fall if needed. But something unexpected happened. The lead soldier lowered his blaster. One by one, the others followed. Then he spoke, voice quieter now. "We were told lies," he said. "That you were mad, dangerous, unfit to raise your young. But I see the truth now. She is no enemy," he said to his team. "She is a mother, and he." He looked at Mason as her shield, with a simple hand gesture. The guards turned away. No words, no more orders, just silence. Jera stood there, frozen, breathing hard, waiting for a shot that never came. When they were gone, she dropped to her knees, the tension leaving her all at once. Mason ran to her, holding her close as she cried against his chest. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." That night, the fire in the cave burned brighter than ever. Jera curled beside Mason, her children safe, her heart full. She placed her hand over his and said softly, "I made a promise when I knocked on your door. I said I would warm your bed." Mason smiled, brushing her cheek. "You've done more than that," he whispered. "You warmed my life." The cave was no longer just a shelter, it was a home. A place where love had bloomed in the coldest part of the galaxy, and in that quiet, glowing space, one human and one alien mother began the life they chose together.